The Fighter, movie review. So this is another one of my old movie reviews that I'm working through as part of my scripted movie review series. This came out in 2011. I've mentioned this before, but I'll mention it again. It's interesting going back through these old movie reviews and rediscovering a lot of movies that were really the flavor of the month at the time. You know, everybody was talking about them. And some of these movies like this one, I don't remember having heard anyone talk about this in years now. I mean, and again, maybe I'm just hanging out with the wrong crowd, but this seems like another movie that really was the flavor of the month at the time and now seems, at least to me, to be largely forgotten about. Got a lot of press at the time for Christian Bale, who actually wasn't playing the lead in this movie. He was playing one of the supporting character. But Christian Bale famously lost a tremendous amount of weight to play this role, and this was cited as kind of his method acting or his dedication. The film is starring Mark Wahlberg and Christian Bale. Mark Wahlberg is actually playing the lead, and it's a sports movie about a boxer. Now, I'm going to confess that I've never really been a big sports fan. And I've never been a big boxing fan. And I don't mean that as a slight on anyone who likes this kind of stuff. I mean, you know, in one of my previous videos, I was just talking about Batman. So I certainly can't play the intellectual snob here. But for whatever reason, I just could never get into sports. I never really... It didn't seem to have any stakes to me. Especially like in a sports movie. It's like, well, I mean, what do I care who wins? I've also never really been a boxing fan. So maybe that held me back from getting invested in this, but I felt like I couldn't really accept the premise of the movie. The premise of the movie is that the whole self-worth of Mark Wahlberg's character relied on him winning these boxing matches. That was like his whole character arc, or his whole redemption was winning the boxing matches. And I never understood why I should want him to win. I mean, I guess I want him to win because he's the protagonist of the movie. But if you take a step back, you're like, well, I mean, the other guy in the ring, he's got just as much of a right to win as well, doesn't he? I mean, presumably the other guy is also training really hard and has his own story arc. You know, I mean, Batman, and I realize Batman is pure fantasy. But it is pure fantasy, and you can say, okay, here's the good guy, here's the bad guy. With boxing, you're like, but there's no good guys or bad guys here. There's just two athletes in the ring. So why do I have to get all invested in this guy's story when... Yeah, I know this is the wrong way to evaluate a sports movie. I just couldn't help myself. On the other hand, though, this is a movie which aspires to be more than just a sports film. There's a lot of family drama, and the film is also about a man trying to assert his own individuality against a family that wants to swallow him up. And Christian Bale's story arc about hitting bottom because of drug addiction gets almost equal time with that of Mark Wahlberg's story. Christian Bale won Best Supporting Actor for this movie, but he's almost more than a supporting actor. He's almost more of a co-star in this movie. Also, this film gets points from me for having a great soundtrack. The high-energy sound How Do You Like Me Now by the Heavies does a great job of opening this movie, and I had never heard that song before I saw this movie. But after seeing this movie, I'm like, oh, that's one of my favorite songs of all time now. And if you're not familiar, you know, you can find it on YouTube. How Do You Like Me Now by the Heavies, a great high-energy song. I didn't like the soundtrack for this movie across the board. I don't like Here I Go Again by Whitesnake. I've always thought that was pretty cheesy, but you can't win them all. On the whole, it was a really good soundtrack. So, yeah. Had a hard time getting invested in the boxing story arc part of it. Thought the acting was really good. Thought Christian Bale's character was really interesting. And I like the soundtrack. So some points on both sides here.